The 2025 WNBA Draft is slated to be one of the best classes in recent memory, with a huge group of college players who are going to be coming out at the same time, largely due to COVID waivers, allowing them to extend their stay and continue to develop their games. But we also have a massive international class that has a ton of upside and a lot of potential to impact the first round. That was made even more intriguing this past week as German forward Annika Soltau decommitted from the University of Washington and made her decision to go pro. After spending this past year playing for Freiburg in the German Bundesliga, Annika will be making her move to go play for Gernika in Spain, teaming up with Awa Pham, a tremendous prospect in the 2026 class who eventually we're going to have to dive into at some point. But point being, with the eligibility rules, Annika turns 20 this year of the draft. And when you turn 20 the year of the draft as an international player, you are eligible to be drafted. With Annika not going over to play in college and being able to develop her game as a pro immediately, I think there's a real chance that Annika can play herself into being a back end to middle of the first round prospect with how the draft is currently slated. What makes her game so special? What makes her an interesting prospect? And how does she fit in the modern WNBA and where it's headed? Any selling point for me on Soltau as a prospect for a W team starts and finishes with her defense. She's a remarkably high impact defender, particularly as a rim protector, but also brings real mobility and body control that we're going to highlight shortly in video. But I want to start off by pointing out I think so much of the league and where it's headed is about having the ability to adapt, to play with versatility, but not just versatility, being able to like meaningfully do multiple things at a high enough level that warrants playing time. I think what Annika brings defensively currently and can grow into is something that allows her to unlock the opportunity to continue growing into her offensive skill set. There are multiple ways to look at and understand rim protection, but also ways that it plays out on court. And for Soltau, it primarily plays out in her weak side ability. She is tremendous blowing up plays. She's stashed in the corner from the slot. Overall, her awareness just pops continually as somebody who is able to rotate backline and make a difference. Obviously, all right, yeah, you see the play get down into the post. That defender gets a little bit overwhelmed baseline. Soltau's defender obviously, comes out to the free throw line to open up for the pass, but she makes heady play, cut off baseline. This year, I was really impressed with Annika at Hoop Summit. Her box score wasn't anything crazy, but I thought she really belonged. I love this play because, again, like we're talking about with stashing, this is key. McKinley Randolph is a player I'm very excited to watch at Louisville this next season, but she's currently a player who's not super consistent as a shooter. So she knows the personnel. I'm helping down off the slot. Joyce Edwards is going to cook anybody in the post one-on-one. Knows, okay, she's going to come back up and under. And here I am. That's a block. Possession change. One of the other things, too, I think what will be interesting for Soltau, she's kind of like a tweener to me. I think she's going to primarily play the 4 in the WNBA with the hope that she'll grow into playing more at the 5. It's worth noting that she's still, again, a very young person. I think there's a sliding scale for looking at what strength development and being in a weight room can do for a player. But I think for Soltau, to me, she's somebody who very much has room to continue adding and growing into strength. It always depends on frames, but she's somebody I would bank on being able to grow that in. Obviously, it depends on what her personality is and how committed she is to doing that. I think seeing what her talent is already, there's just a world of possibility there. But point being, I think you could look at her frame and think, oh, she's not super strong, but she honestly does a very good job of walling up and using verticality, in my opinion. There are definitely moments where she can get overwhelmed in the post and with strength in general, but I'm always impressed with her ability to maintain verticality and make plays. And again, this is what we're talking about. Like, I think there's room for her to become like a pretty solid switch defender too. Maybe it's more in late clock stuff, not something you want to do all the time, but I think her ability to just make quick decisions on a closeout and use her length to smother people, again, always come away pretty impressed with that, especially at the youth level. Will be interesting to see how that plays out in the Spanish league. Again, you have a hard action to defend. London Jones, really good shooter. Run somebody through 2 screens, including a guard screen, which I think guard screens are where you have a lot of tendency to mess up switches because you're not always expecting a guard screen. So Soltau saves the day here, flying off this switch. Block, possession change. So like we were mentioning earlier in talking about a player who playing through strength. I think, again, looking at her verticality and ability to just kind of ride drives out is something that I would consider a standout skill for her. She's really good at using her hips and lower body to just ride somebody to the rim, keep her hands high, and then make a play on the ball when she's in the paint. Against one of the best drivers in college basketball, and Cody McMahon, somebody who will be a pro someday, this is standout. Again, has to switch because of the way that screen hits, and just makes a great play to ride that out, contest, block it at the rim. Again, the ability to contain drives and use her length just stands out so much. I think it's such a key aspect to have as a big defender, because I think so often people think of, like, if you're guarding out on a switch or an island, you should be able to just keep that player in front, especially if they're a small. And like, that's just not realistic. Everybody cannot be Asia Wilson or Brianna Stewart or Alyssa Thomas. It's really hard to do that. So being able to ride defenders out into help towards the rim is productive. That is good stuff. So again, looking at body control, I think this is one of my favorite things that I clipped in going back and watching Annika's stuff. I think her hips just stand out continually as something that is impressive to me. Like, it's a small thing, but it's a key thing again. All right, defender gets her matched up one-on-one. This is, by technicality, a mismatch. You have a guard on a big. And then go right, get her to turn her hips. Go left, come through. Annika flips her hips again, arms up, block. That's not easy. Like, it's real fluidity to be able to do that. It may not look necessarily quote unquote fluid. I would say Annika's more of she's not like a traditional athlete in the sense of being bigger, faster, stronger, but in terms of flexibility and fluidity at her size, I'd say she's a real plus. And this is one of those things that stands out, particularly on the defensive end. So now we can dive into the closeouts, which matters a ton because, again, when we're talking about a player who is a high-level rim protector, I think one of the things you're going to see automatically is, all right, let's try and draw her out of the paint with shooters, make something happen. She really, again, impresses with her closeouts. This is maybe not always like, I think the idea of technique here is try and force her to not go middle. You really never want to give up middle, pretty much any defensive scheme. Defender goes that way, but then quick flip of the hips, ride it out, contest at the rim. Again, it's worth noting, in the pros, it's not going to look like this every play, but there's the potential for it to get to this. And that's what's exciting. So looking again at that in kind of a scramble situation, out of transition, Annika finds herself isolated by a small, but again, moves her feet, slides, use the hips, contests at the rim. This is great stuff. A lot of where the WNBA is headed is all about pace and space, and being able to optimize that will also contain it on the defensive end. And when we're talking about what that means offensively, I think a lot of people tend to look at it just as shooting, which I get. I think shooting is a huge part and a very large adaptation of where the league is headed. But the most important aspect of spacing to me is decision making, being able to make the right decisions quickly in order to capitalize on what a defense is presenting you or what you can take advantage of from them. And Soltau fits that for me. She's someone who I think is going to become a consistent shooter in time, but it's all about her being 6'4" with the ability to make plays. The league is becoming a league about playmaking, both off the dribble, as a shooter, as a cutter. Like, just being able to do things within an offensive flow is so key in being able to stay on the court, and part of what makes Annika so intriguing. At 6'4", she has a real ability to handle the basketball, make plays off the dribble from a standstill, and fit it in the flow of an offense. It's pretty rare to find somebody 6'4" with that kind of ability who isn't a negative athlete and that can actually make an impact defensively. Having real versatility, but also the ability to stay on court, is crucial in being a front court player in the WNBA and where it's at right now and where I think it's headed. And Soltau fits that to a T. Annika's ability to use her size and her playmaking vision in a multitude of actions is incredibly crucial and a large part of what I think makes her exciting. I think she's a player who you're really going to want to run some things through, and particularly as the league's become a league that, is very into running handoffs. Like, you think of Connecticut. Honestly, you think of a team like Minnesota and how much they have, been willing to do a lot of inverted actions and playing more out of their posts. I think Annika brings a lot of potential to do that as well. You also get to really see her make a ton of plays in transition, where I think that's going to be something that can be there at the next level as well. Is she going to be a player who takes the ball up every time? No. But I think she's a player who can do some stuff with her versatility in a way that is meaningful. She really is able to showcase her ability with her eyes up, make the right plays, make them quickly, and fill lanes. Part of what I also love from her in this potential tweener archetype as more of a 4 or 5 who can handle some of the offense, it's not necessarily that you need to run things through her. I think it's more that she just makes good things happen when she touches the ball, especially as a connective playmaker. She's so good. Like this, it seems like a small thing. It's just a broken play. It's a kind of blah pass, like more of just a good play by the defender, but ball gets tipped. Annika knows where this ball is going before she even touches it. Like she sees Miriam Diallo, who is actually a really interesting prospect that Germany also has coming up that I think people should have their eyes on. But she knows Diallo's cutting here. She knows that pass is open. It's great touch, money, easy points. Again, having somebody this size that can see, make the right plays, and do them quickly that's just found money. That's something that you want to find. She maps the court incredibly well. It's worth noting at U18. It's worth noting that at U18, I think she was able to, really use her size to her advantage, which I think is going to be something that we're going to see tested a lot more at the pro level. But again, it's the court mapping. So by court mapping, I mean she knows where her teammates are. She gets the ball off the rebound, post, draws the defender's eyes automatically. All right, cool, that's open. Doesn't end up being an assist because the ball doesn't go down. But again, this is the good stuff. That's what you want to see. It's just quick connective plays. I think she's going to be a good connective player in offenses, and we need more of those. So again, in this play, you're looking at the quickness of things. This is off of kind of a broken play for Germany, off an offensive board. France scrambles a little bit, and Soltau is over here in the slot, gets the ball. Defense doesn't have anybody fully committed to her. They end up Xing this out. But again, sees that she has 2 defenders watching her, waits for the moment where she sees, okay, she has her feet towards me, quick flip, shot in. Again, quick stuff. Like if I think it's just important remembering what would happen if this is different. If Soltau holds this ends up being nothing. Like maybe it ends up being like an isolated drive after the offense spaces and the defense is reset. But like the point is you don't want the defense to get reset. You want to attack quickly. You want to capitalize on that. You get points off the offensive rebound because the ball swings, it goes fast, hits the open shooter. And lastly, again, quick flash into the zone, sees the defense, reads it, sees her defender step up, which is what happens from the middle of the zone when you flash. Defender's going to come down, cover the dunker spot. As soon as she sees that defender slip over like that, awesome. Corner wide open, easy. Again, I think it's worth noting, like passes like this in the zone, they're supposed to be relatively easy. But I think whenever you're scouting this kind of stuff, it's about the quickness. It's quickness. How do you use your eyes? How do you see things? How do you kind of adapt to the way things are done? And I just think it's quality stuff. Being a good passer and decision maker is one of the most fundamentally important aspects of modern basketball. But in order to really get the most out of your playmaking ability, you need to be an adept scorer. The better you are of a scorer, the more that you can consistently draw the defense, and from all areas of the court, the more you can get your playmaking off. And especially when you look at a player who is playing primarily at the 4 or 5, and like we're talking about with inverting offenses, I think there are some areas for growth that I really want to see from Annika this next year and throughout what I think will end up being a rookie contract. It takes a lot of time for some of these things to happen. And I'll also play out in some of the things we talk about with some comparisons that are currently or have been in the W later. So starting off with their scoring ability, I think the drive game is the most important to highlight because it kind of all flows into everything. So when we're talking about what she can do best, I think inverting offense, being used as a decision-making hub, somebody who can hand the ball off, play out a pick and roll, be used as a roller. Like I think there's a lot, like kind of in the video I did with talking about Rickea Jackson, there's a lot that you can do in terms of getting Annika going, as a screener to get into her offense. Point being, she has a ton of versatility in what she can do, but I think a lot of it is from what she can do outside looking in. Particularly when you're going to be a DHO facilitator, you really need to be able to take players off the bounce. And that's something Annika is very adept at right now. Again, you look at everything, there's more denial, there's not really anything going on. Cool, I have a 1v1. I'm going to take you to the rim. And Annika is primarily a left-hand dominant player right now, especially as somebody who's dribbling. So obviously you have that drive that just happened off the kind of denied DHO Now you have a fake DHO, which I love this. I think keepers are such a great way to, get players one on one, get them opportunities to attack the slot, attack a tilted defense that hasn't even necessarily been tilted yet. Because you think about it, like defenses are going to start, when they see a handoff is coming, they're going to load up. They're going to be like, all right, well, we're going to try and stop this. We want to blow up this action. And that creates opportunity for slips in the gap like this. This is just a really fantastic footwork here from Annika, stuff that you love to see her get into. She was fantastic early on in this game against France doing this. Another variation like we're talking about, it's not really a screen, but it is like a screening action in a sense because the defender has to think about it. The other defender gets dragged away. You isolate Annika one-on-one, and then you actually see her get that drive off to the right side. Gets the N1. I think it's interesting. Like, she's not somebody who, I think there's room for her to continue growing in efficiency with her right hand, but she does have moments of being comfortable with her right hand. I think there's room for her to keep improving overall, though, as a ball handler as she gets stronger. Kind of like I mentioned on that with that past video on Rickea Jackson, getting somebody as a screener to get them open in offense is something that I really like thinking about. So you have China is playing drop here. And you have kind of it's a pop and drift out to the slot. Ball's a little bit behind Annika, corrals it, takes slower footed defender off the dribble, tough contact finish. Similar look, ball screen, pop and drift. This time, attack with the left. One of the things that I love that she does that I think there's room to keep growing on with her finishing is this kind of like stride change a little bit to fight through contact and get to the rim. She's, again, like, I think continuing to get better at playing through physicality and being able to finish on the interior more efficiently is going to be continuing to adapt some of this stuff. I think a lot of it's going to come with just improving her strength, improving her core strength, particularly in her legs too. But again, the stride length stuff to get to the rim still is impressive. Like, that's stuff that you want to keep seeing from a player. One of the next things when you talk about inverting offense and having a player who can play from the perimeter is the shot. So we have that, again, like Germany in this U19 World Cup worked in a lot of stuff with kind of playing more of this pistol action, even though, pistol is more on the side, but like same idea of like that kind of handoff. Obviously a little bit of a botch handoff. They kind of, it goes like right into her chest. It's not like a perfect pass by any means. But self-gathers, is given the space, pops, shot. Easy money. I think part of what has me excited about stuff like this is she continues to get more consistent and more comfortable on this stuff. Hey, maybe we see her run some inverted pick and roll. There was a little bit of that at Freiburg. There was a little bit of that playing U19, U18. I don't know if that's going to be something we see super consistently, but I think if her handle tightens a little bit and she continues growing as a shooter, like, it's a real possibility. And again, something that has you excited. Here's a more close-up look at her shot. I think in general, I don't have like any kind of problem with it. I would like to see her as she continues to get older, grow into using her legs even more. I think there's room for the guide hand to kind of change on the ball a little bit too. But in general, I feel like pretty solid about her shot. I think, again, sort of like we're going to talk about with comps in a minute, being able to just become a more consistent shooter and more on volume is going to be important for drawing the defense out. Because again, you notice like, all right, well, she's not getting guarded here. Part of that, they're playing a zone. The zone gets botched a little bit. I don't think that, I don't think they were intentionally leaving her alone. It's just that's how it happens. But in order to have moments where she's not just left wide open alone and helped off of, she's going to have to become a very consistent shooter. When you talk about like those screening actions we just showed, if you want to make it so that defenses can't go under and you can get that pop off without always having to, screen and rescreen, you got to be a more consistent shooter. And I think that's going to be a really big aspect of her game growing and getting to the next level. But I do think there's real room for that to happen. So first and foremost, shout out to Synergy Sports. Really crucial and important in looking at the data and more numbers-driven side, along with the video, to kind of help with some of the players who, you don't as readily get stats and available data on players who aren't in the United States when you're in the United States. You have to search a little bit harder, and Synergy definitely makes my life easier in that way. I'm really proud and happy to partner with Synergy in order to use their data. If anybody ever has questions, of course, drop me a line. I have an affiliate link down below that I will share as well. Cannot recommend Synergy enough. Why is the data important here? Again, when you're talking about a prospect and you're looking at potential, it's important to remember, yes, it's potential, but also What is going to stick right away? What is something that they're doing right away? What is not consistent yet? Like we just talked about with Annika's scoring growth and potential, I want to point out the post ups first because to me, when you're talking about a player who's inverting offense, number one, she has the ability to attack slower bigs off the dribble. I think that's important. How is she going to develop as a post up player is crucial as well. I think looking at the numbers and also in kind of what you see watching, she's a solid post up player, but I think she's much better as a post up player when she draws the defense and she's able to pass out rather than when she's a scorer. What does that mean when you get to the pro level and you maybe don't regularly draw a double team? I want to see her continue to grow as a post player. I think she has the craft and the flashes of footwork to keep growing into some things. But again, I think a lot of it's going to end up being strength because right now she can have some issues with, a smaller defender can maybe stick her up and she becomes, it becomes just more difficult trying to finish over the top. But I think there's real room for her to continue growing in that. That's something that I think we see from players who are dedicated to growing their craft. That's growing scoring polish and efficiency is definitely doable as you continue to hone your body and become a pro. I think that also plays out on drives. What I do like is that she gets to the rim quite a lot. She draws fouls on over a fifth of her drives when she played in the Bundesliga this last year. And 44.6% true shooting isn't amazing. It's definitely not exactly what you want to see perfectly as a pro, but I think, again, it gives us an indicator. She's able to do this a lot, but I think improving the efficiency and effectiveness with which she does it and how she handles contact is really crucial. I want to start off by saying that all comparisons are, of course, not one-to-one. I think it's more about kind of what you can pick and pull from each individual journey that a player or prospect had and how it might relate to another. I used to be somebody who really hated comps. I think you can put undue pressure and expectation on a player in a way that's just really not fair, especially I think anytime that you see somebody shoot a mid-ranger, that player gets equated to one of the greatest players ever because they're able to shoot the mid-range. And again, there's so much more that goes into it. But I think I've changed my mind lately in terms of recognizing it's just important to be able to connect with people and show them, this is why I think this player is like this. This is how you can see what this player might be. And to me, it's just more about finding comps that really put in the work. And are able to showcase like the legitimate aspects of your player. And did these players have similar kinds of potential hurdles to reach to get to where they're at? And I think to me, I narrowed in on three players who, in watching the last couple of years and going back and watching the W at large, these players all have pieces that I think fit in to who Annika Soltau could be, where she's headed as a player. And again, when you're talking about why you're excited. So Tangela Smith, Alana Smith, and Azrae Stevens are all three players that have impacted winning at a pretty high level in the WNBA. I think you would probably consider all of them role players. Azrae definitely has the potential to keep growing into more. I would argue the same with Alana. And I don't mean role player as a slight. Like Tangela was an all-star. She was a really damn good player for a long time. One of the staples of longevity in the WNBA and professional basketball at large. But I think, again, when you look at all three, growing into being a versatile forward takes time. All three of these players can make plays as a passer. They can make plays off the dribble. They can stretch. They can face up. And they bring a lot of versatility and impact defensively as rim protectors. Again, though, I think when you look at Alana and Tangela, both of them really had to take some time to figure out, scoring in the arc as more slight forwards and kind of that tweener form. And I think Alana has become one of the best finishers in the league over the last year and a half, but it took her some time to get accustomed to that and to find a role for that. Azrae is somebody who has, of course, unfortunately dealt with a lot of injuries in her career, but I think when you saw her get to play for the Sky, she was one of the best reserves in the league and an awesome spot starter when she played as well, and somebody who I think has the potential to continue growing into being more of a star as she gets healthy as well. Point being, continuing to flash that ability to grow as finishers on the drive, as finishers in the post, and as players all around is very crucial in becoming this kind of player who can be such an all-around impactor. It's worth noting as well. Again, I'm not saying she's going to exactly be these players, but I'm also not saying that she's not. I think that there's a way that maybe Annika Soltau becomes a 3 or 4-time All-Star, but I think you're banking on a lot. I think when you're looking at this stuff, you have to think more of like, okay, if things go really well, what's like the 75th percentile outcome, or this or that. And, this is not a perfect science. I think part of what's so fun in watching prospects is being along for the ride and figuring out what they're going to be, watching them grow and evolve. And I can't wait to do that with Annika Soltau as she moves over to Spain and has a real chance to be an impact player in the 2025 WNBA draft class. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe the channel. Leave me a comment down below. What do you want to see next? Who are you excited for in the 2025 WNBA draft? And most importantly, have a great rest of your day. Appreciate you watching.